Welcome to the webinar, everybody. My name is Joel Stoner. Today we're talking about equipment management in Studio Suite 12. This will be about 45 minutes. We are recording this and it'll be posted to our site in probably a week or so. So go ahead and type in any questions and I may answer them in line or at the end. And I want to start talking about some conceptual things first. So when we're managing equipment, there's static information, and that's what you'll often see in a spreadsheet of equipment. Manufacturer, model, description, cost, barcode, location, some other things like that. That information stays the same all the time. And then there's usage information, and this evolves over time. So for example, we've got a RE Alexa camera, and then we can see the different projects this piece of equipment has been used on, the start and end dates and times, maybe the total hours, the current status or the status of that event, and when it was checked out and checked back in. So that stuff changes over time. And that's hard to maintain in a static spreadsheet. So that's why you need something like Studio Suite to manage your equipment. So I want to take another look at a spreadsheet here. And this is what we'll typically get from a customer as we're onboarding them. They've got this, somebody's put this together. And this works great for a lot of things. You can see we've basically got a row for every single item there, and we call these items. And you can use this even if you do have to check some things in or out. You could just flag them that way. But sometimes you've got other kinds of equipment. Notice these three items here, the Canary cable, the sandbag, and the chair. These have a quantity. So I've got 20 mic cables, 35 sandbags, and 120 chairs. And I can't, if somebody books 10 mic cables or 15 sandbags, I just can't mark this row out because it's really just a subset of the total quantity that I have for those. And so we call these pools in Studio Suite. And that tells Studio Suite that when we're going to book, say, 5 mic cables, how to withdraw that from the 20 and make sure that there's 15 available during that time period that the item is booked. So it's a different process kind of in the background to manage that. So a pool is a group of like-kind equipment that does not need to be tracked uniquely. It's typically of low value, such as chairs, tables, sandbags, adapters, cables, stands, etc. And a pool of items share a single record, a single serial number. They all have the same barcode, and a quantities field specifies how many you have. We have other kinds of items. Notice here we've got 7 Sony lavalier microphones. We call these collections. And a collection is a group of like-kind equipment, typically of high value, that needs to be tracked uniquely, but also reserved generically, such as 3 out of 7 of the same kind of microphone or 6 out of 10 of the same kind of camera. So notice that all of these items do have separate barcodes, which is important. But if suddenly we purchased, 100 of these things, or even if it's just 20, we don't want to have to repetitively create each one of these records. It would be nice if we could do that from the perspective of a collection. And so creating these items as part of a collection makes it a lot easier to create and also to manage. It also allows us to book them generically. And by that, I mean, maybe next Tuesday, we're going to need 3 lavalier microphones. Today, I don't care which ones they are. And also on my quote, estimate, budget, bid, whatever it is that I'm putting together to coordinate this, I don't want to have to specify 3 particular items or even have 3 line items to indicate that I have 3 of these. I just want to have a single line item that says 3 Sony lavalier microphones. So that's what we can do with a collection, and I'll get into that a little bit more detail. So just to review, we've got 3 main kinds of equipment. We have items, which is a single item per record, booked as a single item. It's a one-to-one booking, pretty straight ahead. It's what you instantly think of when you think about equipment management. Then we've got pools, and that's a single record that represents items with a quantity greater than 1, typically of low value, and don't have unique serial numbers or barcodes. Now, bookings reduce the quantity in stock of that item for the booked date range. And then we've got collections, and a collection represents a group of typically high-value individual items that have unique serial numbers and barcodes that can be reserved generically, vaguely, non-specifically, and then tracked specifically at the time of usage. So this is kind of a different use case. And items that are part of a collection can be managed collectively from a single record in the Collections tab of the Equipment module. So with that, thank you for putting up with the boring preamble there. Let's dig into Studio Suite. So a couple initial things also I want to go over. In the setup area, you can create multiple companies. So a lot of our customers, they'll have a production company, they'll have a post-production company, they'll have a rental company, and they may even have multiple owners. And some of the equipment will belong to one owner, and some of the equipment will belong to a different owner, and those are all different companies. So each piece of equipment in the Studio Suite Inventory module can be assigned to a specific company. Also, I want to briefly mention categories. So out of the box, Studio Suite comes with one category called equipment. A lot of our customers will kind of spread that out, and they'll have a category called video equipment, another category called lighting equipment, another category audio equipment. And that just helps them summarize those better, maybe handle them a little bit more conveniently. If you have a ton of equipment, that's probably a good idea to do. If you've got thousands of pieces, you could do that. It's not mandatory, it just helps you kind of subdivide things a little bit. So I just wanted to mention those two things before we head into not the equipment module. We're going to jump into rooms. Mainly just to point out that within each room, you can specify the equipment that's installed, or I should say you can view the equipment that's installed. So as I scroll through my different rooms here, I'm going to see different kinds of equipment installed. And of course, from the room, we can jump right into the piece of equipment. So here we are in the Equipment Inventory module, and we're looking at the details of this ARRI Alexa camera. So earlier I was talking about the different owners. So who owns this? This is owned by either the production company or our internal rental company. Of course, that's optional. If you are a single company, that's fine. You don't have to use that. We have some customers that will have equipment that's owned by external companies. And so I could say that this is owned by a guy named Fairly Good Engineering, but he lets us use it. So it's in our inventory, but it's owned by somebody else. So I'm going to just put this back to internal for a second here. So we're looking at a couple fields here: serial number, barcode, purchase date, weight, origin, and comments down here. And the picture, if you right click on this, this is how you can insert a picture into that. So the manufacturer model description. And here is that pool checkbox I talked about a little bit ago. The room location, we can specify where it is. This is a drop-down list of the rooms that we have created from the rooms module. And we can also specify what type it is. You may have, furniture, office equipment, props, costumes, all that stuff, so you can edit that. And this edit list, actually all the edit lists, drop-down lists in Studio Suite are editable. So if you have a different set of things, you can edit those. The financial tab, this is where we can put in the cost, the value, down payment, monthly payment, earnings, whether we're leasing it or owning it, lease number, all that stuff. And this is automatically tracking the total maintenance that is being done on each piece of equipment. And we can also set up depreciation schedules. So let's say that after 5 years, we want to say that this piece of equipment is going to be worth $50,000. So I'm going to create a depreciation schedule. And that's going to essentially create a monthly counter of the amount of accumulated depreciation for that month. And then here it is annually. So over 5 years, it's counted down from 80,000 to 74 to 68, 62, 56, finally to 50. So some people love that feature. Other people don't care, but it's nice to know it's there. And we can also create packages of equipment as well. And so what this means is whenever I book or rent this camera, these child items are going to come along with it. And so these are other pieces of equipment in my inventory list. And if I want to add another item to this, I simply hit the plus button. And this is going to bring up a list of all of my equipment. And let's say I want to go ahead and add a 10-foot mic cable to that item. So I've just added that. And here is that 10-foot mic cable. If I want to unlink that, guess what? I just hit the unlink button. Are you sure? Yes. So here is the Collections tab, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, actually. Miscellaneous tab, this is where we can say where it is. Maybe it owns, it's being used by a certain department, or it's assigned to a certain staffer. This person, gets to keep this laptop, for example, kind of thing. IP address if it's got one, version if it's got software on it, some other things here. Promo list means, do we want to include this piece of equipment in our promotional list of available equipment? You know, you might have 1,000 pieces of equipment, but only some of it is worth mentioning to people in a promo list. And then dimensions. Accessories. Obviously, you could put in, you know, manual, adapter, cable, thing like that. So those kinds of small things could either just be notes within this record, or if you wanted to be very careful about tracking them, you could actually create separate records in the equipment inventory for each accessory that you've got and make them part of the package that goes along with that. And I do want to point out that not all of the package contents need to be resources. So that means that those accessories, if they're too small to manage particularly, in and out, you could just say that, yeah, it's in the case, you know, I'm not going to, you know, barcode scan it every time it comes and goes. I just want to know that that's kind of associated with that thing. So there's that. I'm going to skip resource permission groups. So let's talk about that. So this was developed mainly for schools where they would have, for example, freshmen that would come in and want to be able to use a camera. So they would give them the cheap camera, and then they had seniors that wanted to come in and use or check out the expensive camera. And so they needed a way to make sure that only certain people had access to certain equipment. And so over in the contacts module, each user can be designated as a member of a certain group. And I'm not going to get into how those are created, but here are the available groups that are designated as resource permission groups. And I can say that this particular camera is only available to seniors, to contacts that are seniors, or freshmen, or both, as the case may be. So let me know if you got questions about that. I'm going to kind of skip over that for now. And then annual maintenance contracts, start and ends. Maybe there's a cost per year to keep this up. I don't know, so $200 just to keep it humming. And then comments that go along with that. And then the library module. This is kind of interesting because you know, a hard drive is kind of in a gray area between, well, is that a piece of equipment or is that something relative to library? And it's kind of in the middle. So for any items that you have that are hard disks, if you check this checkbox, you can start to go into the library module in assigning content to a particular hard drive. And I'm going to kind of skim over that for now too. Somebody let me know if you want to hear more about that. Let's talk about creation. So this is the function bar. It's at the top of every screen in Studio Suite. So to create a new one, we just hit the new button. But you'll notice that it's going to ask, are you creating an item, a pool, or a collection? So let's just be simple and let's call it an item. So we'll go ahead and put in the manufacturer here. Let's call it, I don't know, Sony X1000 camera. So that's how you create a piece of equipment. And if we wanted to duplicate that, we could hit the duplicate button. If we wanted to delete that, I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And if we want to search for a certain piece of equipment, so I'm going to hit find. Maybe I want to search for something that is greater than $10,000. So this is going to give me my one item of that value. And then we can also omit and sort. So if I bring all of my records back again, I'm going to do find all. I can sort this any way I want. But if you are on the list view, you can also sort it by any of the headers. So if I wanted to sort by manufacturer and so on, I can do all of those things. So if I wanted to search for Canon, this is going to show me all of my Canon items right there. So let's look at rates. Rates are basically rules that determine how much something is. So you can see here for this Canon camera, I've got a daily rate, and I've got another daily rate, and I've got a no charge rate. So let's go to something that doesn't have any. Oh. Seems like I've got rates for everything. Okay, fine. We'll just make another rate for this. So I'm going to hit the plus button here, create new rate. We'll call this a regular. And then I'm going to call this the EQ webinar, just so we can see it. And then whenever we're building a rate, we have to specify the unit of measure. So typically, equipment is done by the day. And this also gives us the opportunity to do something like a 3-day week or a 10-day month. Not everybody does that, but some people do. If you leave those at their default value, it's going to show up, it's going to count 7 days. But what's neat about this is if you book it for a week, it's only going to charge the customer for 3 days. So let's put in a day for a microphone, I don't know, $50, something like that. We also have the opportunity to put in expense. So if we have to re-rent this or we're leasing it and it's a monthly thing and we know that there's going to be a charge to that. So for a day rate, there's really no expense. You have the opportunity to put in a market rate. So maybe all of your competitors are charging 65 or something like that. Equipment usually doesn't have overtime rate. So we'll leave that empty for now. But if we are eventually going to be exporting this out to QuickBooks, we will be able to put in the QuickBooks class or category, the item type, the item name, which you can edit here, and also the QuickBooks account. So that's it for rates. Just know that each item can have multiple rates, and we can also set a default rate. Now, because equipment moves around quite a lot, it's going to automatically track all of the usages of that. So this was actually the item that I was demonstrating in the slideshow portion earlier. Here is an automatically collected list of all of the usages of this piece of equipment and the status of them. And totally apart from that is the scan manager. And this is where we can say that Joel is in the equipment inventory room, equipment room. Enter or scan a barcode. And what it's going to do is go find that item and it put the current date and time that Joel said it was in the equipment room, and we could add a note to that. And where the real value of that comes in is we can search for all of the equipment that has ever been scanned, or equipment that has been scanned since maybe the beginning of the month, because we're doing a monthly inventory. Or we can also search for all of the equipment that has never been scanned or not scanned since a certain date. This is a really valuable tool when you're needing to find out, hey, where's our equipment? When's the last time we saw it? That kind of thing. So we also have the ability to track maintenance history for these items as well. So we can also schedule maintenance. So if I want to say at sometime in June, let's say June 1st, I want to inspect the lens, something like that. Check the battery. Excuse my typing. And we can also put in specific repairs. So if this item just happened to break, I'll say that this is the problem, blah, 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 blah. I can say how it was plugged in, if I ordered any parts or used them, how important is it for me to fix this item. Operator error is my favorite checkbox, happens to get checked a lot. What action was taken to fix it, and we can also document, this took 2 hours at $55 an hour. And 23 cents in parts to fix. We also have the ability to block book this out. So if I have to send this thing back to the camera, back to the factory today, and I expect it's going to be out for the entire month, I can go ahead and block book it, and it's going to book it and prevent other people from booking it during that period. So it's a nice feature. If, for example, on this repair, we got a purchase receipt or a list of the issues that were fixed with that, I would be able to attach this as an attachment. So I'm going to go grab a file, and let's pretend this thing right here is a receipt or a repair, something like that. It's a picture of a buffalo, but let's pretend that's a purchase receipt. We'd be able to link that document to this repair. So now I'm going to head back to the equipment inventory. We were looking at the maintenance history tab. And by the way, when these tabs are underlined, that means there's information on them. So that's good to know. The attach tab is similar to what we just did over on the maintenance. Maybe here we would have a PDF user guide. So this could come from a file on my computer, a whole folder. It could be just a URL to the manufacturer's website. Could be something we grabbed from FTP, or maybe we've got a document posted up on Dropbox, Box, or Google Drive that we want to link to this record in the database. I'm just going to grab a file from my desktop again. And let's choose this item here. That's foreshadowing for something future. See that data migration template. So I'm going to go ahead and upload that. And that's an Excel spreadsheet. And if anybody needs to see that, they would be able to click on it, and it's going to download a copy of it onto their drive. So let's go to the web viewer. So if I want to search eBay for this particular item, I just click on eBay, and it's going to bring up everything on eBay that contains those words. And basically, we're doing a search on Neumann M49, and we can do the same on Amazon. I don't think Amazon sells those. Maybe they do. Of course they do. So there they are. And this is a great way to just do research on the product or find out what everybody else is buying and selling it for. I'm going to jump into the FileMaker version just for a second because it's slightly different. Go to Equipment here and go to Web Viewer. And so this has the search is kind of pre-formatted right for you in the window. So maybe let's see if Craigslist has anybody selling at M49. Nope. B&H. Yeah, they've got it there. All right, so I'm going to hide FileMaker, go back into the browser. Connectors and cables, this is where you could document cables and connectors that were attached to this particular item. And the Reports tab is where we're going to be able to find reports about equipment. So let's choose who we want on the letterhead. Let's go to Planet Perfect Rentals. And I can narrow this down to only show me equipment in a certain room if I want to. And if I was printing a depreciation schedule, I would put in a start and end date for that. But maybe I just want to do a simple list. So I've got a couple different ways to sort these. So I'm going to do manufacturer. And you can get kind of overboard with sub-sorts within that. I'm just going to leave it at manufacturer. So here's an equipment list. And when you're doing this from a browser, like I am currently, it's going to open up a new tab. And of course, in the upper right, you can either print it or download it onto your computer as a PDF. So there's a bunch of different printouts. And one of the great things about using FileMaker is that you do have the ability to go in and very easily customize or modify the way all of those printouts look. And there's a bunch of them. There's just a straight list. The insurance list includes your serial numbers and what you paid for it when you bought it, those kinds of insurance-y things. There's another one formatted for clients that does not show serial numbers or what you paid for it. It's just availability of the things that you've got. Maybe you are selling a piece of equipment and you want to print out a maintenance history for the current item. You could use this. Here's the connectors and cables. And then we can print some barcodes for these items. And maybe I should talk about barcodes for just a little bit. So a lot of people think that barcodes are much more complex than they really are. Really what a barcode scanner does is it just spits out the same thing as your keyboard does when you type something, except it reads it with a laser. Some people have asked if they can use their phones, their iPhone or whatever, to scan the barcode. You can, it's just not the best way to do it. It's really better to have a laser instead of a camera. It's going to read it a lot faster and from a distance and all that kind of stuff. So I would invest in a barcode scanner if you're going to be doing a lot of equipment management, check-in, check-out, and so forth. So we have a separate barcode module, and the barcode module allows us to just generate sheets and sheets of barcodes. However, it's going to print them on paper, either like an Avery label, or we can print also on those like Dymo laminated labels, kind of one at a time though. So, if you've got 1,000 pieces of equipment, you don't want to do that. What you probably want to do is do a Google search for durable barcode labels. And then you can give the manufacturer a starting number, like, 1,000, and then they will generate a durable plastic or foil or metal tag that you can affix to a piece of equipment. They come in a number of different sizes. And so that's what I would suggest for barcodes. And while we're on the topic, some people have asked me about RF tags. And that's a whole different process. People think of it as kind of the same, but really because it involves directionality, you have to see that a piece of equipment is moving from one place to another. You need to have a whole bunch of scanners. And it gets to be a very expensive thing. And then there's no real way to, something walks past the scanner. That what does that mean? Is it going out to be fixed, or is it somebody stealing it, or what project is it going on to? So it's really not the best thing at this juncture for equipment management. Let's talk a little bit about collections. So I'm going to go to the collections tab. I have one here called this C100 camera. And so we can see we didn't put any information in generically about the collection, but we do see that there are 5 of them there. So I'm going to do another one. So I'm going to do new. And it's going to say, after defining as much detail as you can about this collection, including rates, picture, etc., click on the plus button, which is this one down here, in the collection area at the bottom left to define how many items are in this collection. StudiSuite will then create those individual item records for you. So let's create a new item. Let's call this a I don't know, call it a Sony. And I always use X1000, so it's a pretend camera I'm going to make up. And I could put in a lot of different information here. Maybe I'm going to buy a bunch of them on the 19th. I'm going to own it, and it's a version 1.2. Warranty expiration is going to be a few years from now, so just put in here 25, let's say. It's got a long warranty. And I know that they're all going to be about three pounds, let's say. And I'm going to make up a cost of, let's say they're $1,500 each. They're owned by my internal company, and they're all going to be insured by a company as well. So now what I want to do is specify a rate for them. So I'm going to go ahead and create a rate again. We'll just be real quick about it. And the reason I'm doing it here is because this rate will be applied to all of the members of the collection. So let's say it's $100 a day, and we're done. So now we've got a rate for our collection item. I'm going to go back to the collections detail tab, and I'm going to say that I have 5 of these. So what it's doing right now is in the background, it's going to go create 5 individual equipment records. It's flagged them all as resources. And if I go to the first one of them, I can see that it's inherited all of that stuff, the warranty expiration, who owns it, the value, all of that stuff. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and put in some barcodes because I want to see how this works. So I'm just going to make it easy to remember. I'm going to call this 111. Then I'm going to go to the next item. I'm going to put in 222. Then I'm going to go 333. 444 and 555. So now we have 5 of the same kind of camera. They've all got unique barcodes, and the rate that we created for the collection has been assigned to all 5 of them. So earlier in the slideshow portion, I was talking about how it's easy, if you have a lot of things, the easiest way to create them is to create the collection parent first, then say how many you've got, and Studio Suite will do the busy work for you. So a lot of people come with those spreadsheets full of equipment, and they want to know if they can import that. So the answer to that is yes. So I like to do that kind of thing in FileMaker. And I'm going to go to my item detail, and there's a gear tool up here. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to say import from template. Now before I do that, maybe I should show you the template. So this template is available from our website. So you can go there and download this, and you can copy paste your equipment inventory into this data migration template. And it's got 2 tabs on the bottom. There's one for contacts where you can populate your contact information, and the second one is equipment. So if you've got your equipment in a spreadsheet already, just copy each column into here. And it scrolls to the left a little bit. There's some user fields if you wanted to get in there, all that kind of stuff. So download that from our site, populate it, and then we're going to go back into Studio Suite. I'm going to select import from template from my gear tool here. It says you want to do this. I'm going to say yes. So here it's going to ask me to locate the file. There it is. And select which tab on the spreadsheet. We're going to choose equipment and continue. Now, when I showed you that, the first 3 records in that were kind of header information. So I'm just going to skip past these first 3 records. And here are the labels. And now we're going to start looking at actual pieces of equipment. And we can see that they're lined up with the fields. So the advantage of using our migration template is that the mapping is already done for you. If you need to use your own spreadsheet for whatever, you would perhaps need to do some remapping to move fields up and down to match your data fields. So I'm going to hit OK on that. And we'll go import. So this is going to import all of those records for us. Imported 38 records, and so now if I go to my list tab, we're going to see all of those items in there. So let's talk a minute about resources. If I do a find all, we'll see that I've got some items that are resources and some that are not. So the only items that you need to book or schedule onto a project are the ones that need to be turned into a resource. If you've got lights screwed to the ceiling, amplifiers screwed in the wall, you don't need to mark those as resources because you're not really going to book or schedule them. They're always there. So let's say in the case, though, of this big list that I just imported, I'm going to find them all. I'm going to go down here to the date field and say created on 2/15/18. That's going to bring me back that list of 43 items that I created, and I'm going to omit the first 5, those Sony X1000 cameras, because they're already resources. And then here are those first 3 labels from that spreadsheet. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that header item from the spreadsheet. And so now we've got the raw list of equipment that I imported. And let's say I know that all of these need to be resources. In earlier versions of StudioSuite, you'd have to actually manually click those checkboxes. Now we have a button to do it for you. Toggle the resource status of the current found set. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And this goes a little bit slow, but it sure is a lot better than doing them manually. And the reason it's going slowly is because it needs to confirm that all of the data is correct. It needs to have a manufacturer model description. Some other details need to be in there before it can technically be a resource. So notice as it's going through there, it skipped. Well, I'll wait till it finishes. It skipped these items here. They could not be made resources. And if you'll recall, these are the items that we had multiple, that had quantities in them. So I'm just going to hit OK there. There they are. So what I've got to do before I can make them resources is just tag them as pools. So I'll go to the next one, pool and pool. So having done that, I can now make them resources. I'll say, yes, do you want to make it a resource? Yes. I also have the ability to say stop asking, which I'm going to do. So notice it's not asking me anymore. Do I want to do that? So now I've got a nice big list of equipment. And then, look at this. Here are those Sony lavalier microphones. What do we do about that? Can you make a collection after the fact? Yeah, we can do that. So I'm going to go do this one manually. So I'll hit new. And call this Sony X1000. There it is. Just going to call this the lavalier mic. Oh, I need a different model number. Let's call it the X2000. I can't remember what the other one was. Go back to items. And so I could go to each one of these items. I could go to collection, and I can assign it to the Sony Lav mic collection. That's very tedious. You don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is unlink that. And then I'm going to go back to my collection, and I'm actually going to delete that collection because there's a better way. So I'm going to delete this guy. I just had to show you that so you know you can do that. So now I'm going to go back to items, and I've got all these resources. And now what I'm going to do is click this gear tool again, and I'm going to say build collections from the current found set of records. This is actually also new in StudioSuite 12, and this is going to go manually, this is going to automatically go through that process of building collections for all of the items that you have. And not to beat the dead horse, but collections make your life easier once you have them. So now if we go to our collections tab, we're going to see that it found all of the items that are in there. Here's that Sony collection, the Sony lavalier microphone. So we have now some collections, we've got some pool items, and we got a bunch of regular items. Let's go see how this works from the perspective of a project. So we'll create a new project. So we're in the projects module, create a new project. We'll call it Equip Webinar. And I'm going to go to add items. So we can add items to a project a number of different ways. When I'm looking for collection items, I can simply type a left bracket, and that's going to show me all of my items that are collections. So there's that Sony X1000 camera. It's showing me that I own 5 of them and that I've got 5 available. So on February 15th, I want to go ahead. Actually, let me make it February 16th. I need it tomorrow. And today, I don't really know or care which one it is, but I do know that I need 3 of them on February 16th. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to the project. So now I'm going to have the Sony X1000. It's reserved for tomorrow, the 16th. It's brought in a price for it. I guess I didn't put a price on that. I can also add things other ways. So if I come in here and I want to view my equipment, recalling back to the original, you can set up more categories. So you could have equipment dash video, equipment dash audio, or so on, or just EQ, whatever, however you want to call it. So if you want to subdivide your equipment that way. So I'm going to go ahead and also book on the 16th this camera. And I can see, by the way, that it's already booked, and I'm booking it so that you'll see that we're going to get a conflict notification. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that so you can see that. So we'll add those to the project. And sure enough, it's giving me this conflict notification. So I'll hit OK on that. And so here's the camera, and here is our ARRI Alexa. And we can see that it brought in those child items as part of the package. Let me look at something real quick. Okay, I'm going to put in a currency here. I didn't have a currency specified on this project, so the items came in with no prices on their rates. So let me fix that. That's my fault. I just didn't set up the company correctly. That won't happen for you. So there we go. So that's how you can add things by choosing them from a menu. Now, let's add some things via barcode. So I'm going to go into my barcode view. And I'm going to say add to project. And I'm going to say add to project and check out. So in this case, I'm going to do 111. And I don't know if you saw that, but underneath the Sony X100 camera, which was a collection parent item, a virtual item representing real items, came in the real item. It's checked out, and the collection parent quantity is reduced by 1 to maintain the total quantity of 3. So now I'm going to do 222. It's going to add the second camera there, and sure enough, 333. So obviously, I'm typing these. It works exactly the same if you scan them into with a barcode scanner. So now if I go look at my charges, actual charges, we're going to see that every one of them has a price, that 0 of them are available. And when I collapse it, it's going to summarize the 3 of them. So we have the option of printing this out collapsed with a quantity of 3. We also have the option of invoicing it collapsed with a quantity of 3, or we can print it out this way, where each item is shown. And so there's a couple different versions of the printout. If I go to my actual barcode view here, the printout that I'm going to show is the one that has the barcodes on it. Or actually I have the option to show prices or not, but I'm going to say yes, show prices in this case. But because I printed this from the barcode view, we can see that it's including the barcode, which makes it easy. If you're holding this piece of paper, you can scan it from the paper rather than from the piece of equipment. And it's also showing the weight and replacement value had we entered it into each of those items in the price. And so, of course, we can flip through and get to the total for those items down there. So we just scanned in a couple items and we picked some other items from the menu. And that pretty much gave us all of the items that we have there. I just realized it's 45 minutes. I better see if there is any questions. Okay. Is there a way to notify someone automatically when maintenance is due? Yes. So per user account within Studio Suite, you can specify what kind of notifications each user is going to have. So I'm going to go to Setup, and then we'll go to User Accounts. So we'll go into a particular user account, and there are preferences, so that when I log in, I will get a startup alert for equipment maintenance that's due or overdue. Same with the overdue invoices, low media inventory, and so on. Another question, can you create batch barcodes, kit set up with a master barcode that encapsulates multiple items in that kit? Well, we can generate barcodes sequentially, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You could also manually enter in barcodes of your own design. So you could have a certain category All barcodes in that category would have a certain prefix, or you could have a formula, but that you would have to generate manually. Everybody would want that to be done somewhat differently. If you want more information on that, John, give a call and we can talk more in detail about that. Another question, how does linking an actual barcode scanner to StudioSuite work? What is the process of setting an item in your hand as checked out so that it updates in StudioSuite? And how do you link a pre-printed barcode to an item in StudioSuite? Okay, 3 questions. So a barcode scanner typically plugs in via USB, just like your keyboard. They also come in Bluetooth formats. So if you actually, there's a base unit that you plug into your computer via USB. The Bluetooth unit, you can walk around the room, which is really nice. They typically have a range of around 300 feet. You can start scanning stuff that way. There is a potential downside to that, though, is sometimes when you scan things, you'll have to get some alerts like that item's already checked out, or that item is not actually a barcode, even though it's on there. So sometimes those things happen. You have to come back over to the computer to check that. Process of setting an item in your hand as checked out. Okay, so if we are not going to be using a barcode scanner, we're just going to pick something up and check it out. We can do that as well. I'm going to go back into our equipment webinar. Okay, so here we can see we've got some items, and I can just come in here and say this item is checked out. So you can do this manually also. Because I checked that one item out, it's asking me if I also want to check out all of these other things. I'm going to say don't match. If I did want to check them all out and I did match, it would go and check out all of those items. And we can also do that this way. So if I wanted to, check them all in, and then I hit status, that'll check them all in one chunk. Note that as it's doing these things, it is logging the date and time that it was checked out, and if I check it back in, we're going to see this item get checked back in also. So there, it's been flagged as checked in. All right, I think that, how do you link a pre-printed barcode to an actual item in StudioSuite? Okay, so if we go back to equipment, it's really just a matter of either typing or scanning in the barcode that you see. So for example, we can just get a barcode here and type it in or scan it in to the barcode field. So I like to think of the barcode workflow as omnidirectional, meaning that you can either start with a sheet of barcodes and stick them onto equipment, and then as you're creating those barcodes, those equipment records, scan in that piece of equipment. Or you can actually type in a sequence of your own liking. You can do it that way. There's also a function in FileMaker called replace. We can, sequentially create a sequence of numbers from 1 to whatever, or 1000 to whatever. All right, so I think that's about it for the webinar. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.